Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Loving Life Freely here on YouTube. I am a full-time reseller. This is another interview, you guys, and this is the gal that I was so hoping I would be able to get something lined up with her. She is pretty amazing. She does a lot of different things, and she is redirecting and is doing some really cool things again. I know a lot of you like her. I know a lot of you follow her, and I was so excited to do this interview with you. I will give you a heads up. There is some muffling and some, it's like an echo on her end again. I don't know what's going on with that. And this is like almost an hour and a half long. So grab a cup of coffee, grab a cup of tea, maybe some snacks while you're doing some listings. And this is such a great interview. So many great, things are talked about. Topics are talked about in this interview, guys. You don't want to miss this. She has a lot of great info, a lot of personal information. We talk about a lot of things that are going on in the reselling world right now. Tips and thoughts and feedbacks on different aspects of reselling. So guys, again, sit back, enjoy this fantastic interview, and I'll see you after.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah,
there
I
you
can
are.
hear you.
Okay,
Can you hear
great.
me?
Hello. We worked it out. Yay.
I know.
I
You know,
know.
it's funny because
I was supposed to have another interview on Monday and I completely spaced that one. So that's why I like messaged you because I was like, I don't want to mess this one
Man,
up.
I'm telling you, our lives are so busy right now, aren't they? I don't
Oh
care
yeah,
if you're a
for sure.
mom, if
Oh
you're
yeah, for
retired,
sure.
whatever you're doing. People's lives are just insanely crazy right now. And I
Yeah.
am recording. I've already got
Yeah.
it all set up. It's all recording. So I will
Perfect.
edit everything out. And
Perfect.
then this will post in a couple weeks. I got one posting next week. And then that will
Okay.
post 2 weeks after
Wonderful. Okay.
that. So it'll be a couple
Okay.
weeks. But
Okay.
that way I have a little bit back to back.
That was smart. Yeah,
That
I
was
do very
smart.
fast
Yeah,
too.
I've been trying to
It's
batch work too.
difficult.
It's
Doing
difficult.
eBay
Like
listings, I'm
doing
trying to
eBay
schedule it
listings,
out
I'm
so then
trying
I
to
don't
schedule it
feel
out so
like
then I
stressed
don't
every
feel like
single
so
day, but
stressed every
it's a
single
lot.
day, but
I'm
it's a
back to
lot.
scheduling listings on eBay myself, and yeah. So first, before we get started, let's introduce you. Why don't you go and introduce yourself? I like to do that. That way, I don't mispronounce the name or anything. I always feel
Yeah,
bad.
no worries.
Yeah,
Oh gosh,
no
that's the
worries.
same
Oh
way.
gosh, I'm
Sometimes
the
I'll have
same way.
like
Sometimes I'll
my
have
husband's
like
with
if my
me being
husband's with
introduced, I
me
almost
being
want him to be
introduced,
like,
I
"Hi,
almost
I'm so
want
and
him to
so,"
be like,
because
"Hi, I'm
I
so and
want to
so."
make
So I'm
sure
like,
I
I want to
don't
make sure I
Right?
don't
mispronounce someone's
mispronounce
name.
someone's
I
name.
totally get it.
Um,
So
my name my name is Ashley
my name is
Wheeler.
Ashley
I
Wheeler.
am
I
Ashley
am
Wheeler of
Ashley Wheeler
8
of
on
8
YouTube,
on YouTube,
Instagram,
Instagram,
TikTok, and
TikTok,
I've
and
been
I've
in
been in
reselling now
reselling
since
now since
wow,
2017.
it's been a while.
2017. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's like 7 years already.
I know.
I
It is
know.
actually kind of
It is
crazy.
actually kind of crazy. I just realized it was 7 years
It's
because
kind of the same
it's
time that I
kind
was
of at the
working
same
an
time that I was
investment firm
working an
job,
investment firm
and I was like,
job.
wow, that was
And I was
7
like,
years
wow, that
ago
was
now. Like,
seven
I
years
can't
ago
believe
now.
it's been
Like, I
that
can't
long.
believe it's been that
Yeah.
long.
Okay, so let's start at the basic ground up here. What tweaked in your brain
Okay.
reselling? Was it somebody you knew, you saw I mean, 7 years ago, I've done a few of these interviews now, and back then there wasn't a lot about reselling online as far as
Right.
videos, YouTube.
Right.
So what clicked? How did it like even brainstorm, and then how did it get rolling?
So I had a friend
So I had a
who
friend
was
who
nesting.
was
She was right
nesting. She
about to
was
have, I think
right
it was
about
either
to
her
have, I think
first
it
or
was
her
like either
second
her
her second
first or
child.
second
And
child.
she had
And
found
she
Poshmark.
had found
And
Poshmark.
she had posted
And
on
she had
Facebook
posted
and
on
was
Facebook
basically
and was
saying, I'll pay
basically
$20
saying, I'll pay
for people's,
$20
like, if you
for
have a trash
people's,
bag
like, if you have a
full of,
trash
like,
bag
clothing.
full of like clothing.
So I was
And
like, hey,
so
we
I
have
was like,
six
hey, we
kids at
have
home at this
six
time.
kids at home at
We've
this
got
time.
babies that
We've
are growing
got
out of stuff
babies that are
really
growing out of
fast.
stuff really
This
fast.
sounds a
This
lot
is this
faster than
sounds a
me
lot
trying to do
faster than me
something like
trying
a
to do
yard
something
sale.
like a
So
yard
I
sale.
brought like two or
So I
three
brought
trash
like
bags
two,
to
three
her. But when
trash
I got
bags
there, I
to
was like,
her. But when
what
I
are you
got there, I was like, what the
doing?
heck
Like,
are
why
you
do you want
doing
to
with
buy my
like why do
used
you want to
stuff? I'm
buy my used
curious.
stuff? I'm
And she
curious.
started telling me
And
about
she started telling
Poshmark.
me
And
about
she's like, yeah,
Poshmark
I'm
and
trying
she
to
was
like
like, yeah, I'm
get rid
trying
of
to
a
like
bunch of stuff
get
around
rid
the
of a bunch of
house.
stuff
And this
around the
was funny
house.
because at the
And this
time,
was
like,
funny because at
we
the
weren't
time, like
allowed
we
to
weren't
do certain
allowed to do
categories.
certain
But she was like, I
categories.
sold like
But she
Bose
was like, I
speakers for
sold
like
like Bose
$100,
speakers
like
for like
headphones or
$100,
something
like
like that.
headphones or
And
something
I was
like
like,
that.
dang, like
And I
that's
was like,
pretty
dang,
good.
like
Well,
that's pretty good.
meanwhile,
Well,
I
meanwhile,
had been working
I
a
had been
marketing
working a
coordinator
marketing
position at
coordinator
a gym with
position at a
4,000
gym with
members. I was a part of
4,000
12
members.
different
I was a part of
departments.
12
Oh my
different
gosh.
departments.
I
I
was
was
on track to
I
be
was on
their
track to
creative
be their
director because he
creative
was going to be
director
retiring
because
in a
he was going
couple
to
of
be
years.
retiring in a couple of
Love,
years.
love, love that
Loved,
job.
loved,
It was
loved
like
that
I got
job.
to be
It was
creative
like I
every
got to be
day for a
creative every
full-time
day for a
business or like
full-time business
income.
or
Like
like
that was
income.
perfect.
Like that was
But I was
perfect.
working
But I was
45 minutes
working
away one
45
way.
minutes away one
And
way.
I had
And
just had
I
my
had
third
just had
daughter
my
and
third daughter granddaughter, and my mom was the caregiver for my grandma. She had late stages of Parkinson's. And I was finding myself at lunchtime going, okay, maybe I can help her with like the doctor's appointments. Like I could drive that 45 minutes, help my grandma, like come back here. And I just, as I was trying to sum this up, I was in my brain finally like, do you realize what you're asking of yourself? Like there's no way that you can do this. So I had to make the hard decision of quitting that job and finding a job that was local to my kids, to my mom, so that way I could be there. And so I went into the investment world. And at the time, I remember telling my husband, again, this whole Poshmark thing kind of popped up. And so I was starting to like scout the sites. And I was like, people are like taking photos and doing flat lays. And that was at the time when we were doing outfits and like trying to help people how to style it. And I was like, I can't stop being creative. It has been so much fun being creative at this job. I need to find an outlet. And so Poshmark really became that creative outlet, but also a way for me to make money. Because I always say I never have hobbies. I just have ways of making money. Like making money is my hobby. It's always, if the reality for me is if I'm taking time away from my family, it needs to be benefiting from my family. So I think that's why I've always been attracted to things that have generated an income. And at that point, I started to look online, started to do some research, started my Instagram. And that was when Empty Hainers was doing her YouTube channel. That was when Hustle at Home Mom was doing her YouTube channel. So those were some of the main people that I found that were actually going to thrift stores and flipping product. I only understood flipping as like flipping classic cars because that's what my husband did. So yeah, that was the journey of how I found it out and why I finally said like, I'm going to do this.
And that was kind of back when Poshmark was kind of becoming known. And obviously eBay was very well established. There wasn't a lot of other platforms at that time to kick out to.
Yeah.
You know? So, and did you think about doing eBay at the time? I mean, obviously eBay was more established, so why Poshmark instead of eBay?
Poshmark is the easiest barrier to entry. You do not have to think about shipping labels, like how much does this weigh. You don't have to worry about a lot of the customizable options that eBay has. So I stayed on Poshmark. Oh, and it was also pretty. I know that sounds super silly, but like being able to do the flat lays and style and like it had that boutique vibe, which I was very attracted to when I first started. It wasn't until I was talking with Denali El Ducho, and I was like, I want to make this my full-time thing. She was like maybe a year ahead of me. I can't remember. And she was like, what platforms are you on? I was like, well, I'm on Poshmark. She's like, get onto eBay if you want to go full-time. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do eBay. But this was like already a year into it, so I've gotten consistent with listings. I've gotten like a little bit of an understanding of how to do this. And she was like, if you don't have the time, because again, I was still working full time. She's like, if you don't have the time, hire a VA and have them repurpose everything that you have on Poshmark onto eBay. I did that and I paid $100 a week for 1 month and made over $1,000 just by having them repurpose everything to eBay.
Wow. That kind of says something. A lot of people don't think that. Me personally, Poshmark is like the easiest platform. Mercari is the easiest to run because you don't have to do anything. You list and that's it. I know you don't list on Mercari. I've asked you that question before on via Instagram. But for those of us who actually do make like $100 or $200 extra, which isn't nothing to laugh at, on Mercari you literally just put it over there, and if it sells, it sells. There's no delist. I mean, I still delist and relist, but it goes with Poshmark. It's just there's no extra work, you know? On eBay, though, I find that once you get your tweak arranged with eBay, what I mean by that is you know how to list your items. You know what your items are that you're listing, what your niche is. You get a general idea what the weight is. When you start out, you don't know. You do have to weigh things. But once you get that scale on your hand, what something could potentially weigh, you double check, okay, yeah, that's what that feels like. Even if you're off by a few ounces, that few ounces isn't going to make that much of a deal, right? Once you get those factors down for eBay, eBay is just such a great platform to list on. It's definitely harder than Poshmark, some people are saying. I think the biggest thing are, would you say, like the detailed breakdown that you have to do through the eBay listing, like, you know, all the cotton and the fabrics and what measurements and all that. The funny thing is in Poshmark, we put those things in the description.
Right. We don't put it in the drop
Right.
down.
We don't
Right.
put it in the drop down. I don't think it's more challenging from a listing standpoint. I just think it's more tedious and time consuming because of that
Yeah.
point right there. Poshmark, we can put everything in the description, but I get it because eBay wants everything to be more searchable. So that's why they want it in the drop down boxes. But instead of saying cotton, all of your material, your colors in the description, which I still do anyways on eBay, you have to put every detail into a little drop box. So I think that's
Yeah.
the more tedious portion rather than Poshmark just being the copy paste, you're good to go.
Yeah, that's very true. Do you find that, what would you say right now, the majority of your sales is like half and half eBay and Posh, or does Posh dominate eBay or vice versa? Kind of where are you with your listings?
So if I'm just
looking at my
my listings,
my listings, not live sales, so pulling live sales out of the
Right.
picture with Poshmark, it goes back and forth. I feel like there's one month that I hate eBay and love Poshmark, and then the following month I love Poshmark or vice versa. It just goes back and forth. Like, there'll be times where I feel like eBay's doing well, and other times that I'm like, what did I do wrong? Like, I have gone on the wrong side of eBay. The one thing I would say, if people are watching, if you're on Poshmark and eBay, if something sells on Poshmark, get in the habit of removing it as sold on, or like delisting it on eBay, because that will ding your ratings. And I've actually gotten into the point before where I'm not a top rated seller anymore. I'm like on like, we're looking out for you, like you're not a good seller essentially. And because I've had to cancel a lot of orders, and that in of itself can drop your sales dramatically on eBay.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I know I use Vendu for cross-posting, and they just came out with this new feature where it automatically delists anything before you even go and put the information saying that something sold. But I even with that, I still go in and double check to make sure things are no longer active. I think that's just a smart thing to do as a reseller, because it's still a system and it still glitches.
Yeah.
And I think that when you were just reverting back to, oh my gosh, what's going on with eBay? eBay and Poshmark definitely have their phases every few months where they're doing updates and tweaks. And
That's
I
true.
definitely will
That's
say
true.
affects sales. I don't care how big of a seller you are, what you're listing. If the algorithm is doing goofy stuff, it's going to affect sales because they're trying to figure their stuff out, and maybe it's not kicking out your sales, maybe it's not the algorithm affected. Even though you have great keywords, something's going on and it's not showing your stuff. It is still a computer system, and it's going to glitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the hardest part when people do see those glitches is the knee-jerk reaction is I don't want to spend time on it if I'm not getting good results. But then you end up like feeding the pipeline, and then you stop feeding the pipeline, and then you go back to it because you hear it's good again. And then you end up with very inconsistent sales because you are inconsistent with the listings. And I'm actually utilizing a lot of the same thought process now with my own social media. Like, you've got to keep posting even when the algorithm doesn't side with you, and then all of a sudden the algorithm sides with you, and it's like everything takes off. But if you didn't lay that foundation, it's not going to be there when it decides to get itself back together.
I was just saying that on a YouTube video that I'm getting ready to post is, even when our sales are tanked, it doesn't matter what platform you're on. Consistency is so key, and it's not just platforms. Typically, Januaries are kind of slow for people. People are recovering from Christmas, New Year's, and of course, people are purchasing from New Year's, and then they're waiting for taxes. But there's always those slow seasons no matter what platform, and I think a lot of people, like you were saying, tend to kind of slide back. Okay, well, it's a slow season. Let's not worry about it. We'll wait until it picks up again. No, you've got to be consistent. If you're a reseller, you've got to be listing at least 5 days a week. If you're on eBay, daily, schedule it out. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because some people will say, well, what happened? You're getting great sales, but these other people aren't. And then they go on Instagram and be all dramatic about how they're not making sales.
Yeah.
Okay, where's your consistency factor? I'm not saying that everybody's like that, but I would definitely say that that's a big portion of why there's drama about no sales on certain platforms.
Yeah, I would agree. And
Yeah, I
I
would
actually
agree.
got to
And
talk
I
with
actually got to talk with an eBay customer service rep.
Nice.
And
Cause
I got to a place where I was like, I need to understand this whole status thing. Like, top rated, how do you get this? What helps? What could I be doing basically to get better sales? And he even mentioned this was at a time when I was just posting every single day. And I was doing it at 6 o'clock in the morning because that was the time I had available to do listings every day on eBay. And he was like, you're posting really early. Prime time for you to be listing is like later in the day. And I was like, well, that's when my family's home. And that's when my family needs me. Or I'm running around for different like activities or sports engagements. Like I can't do it at that time. And he's like, just schedule the listings. And I didn't at the time know because previously when we first started with eBay, if you scheduled out your listings, it was 10 cents every listing that you scheduled. So I was like, I'm not going to spend money to schedule my listings. Now they've
I
done
love
away
that
with
too. I was so
So
excited when I saw that.
and you didn't know that.
I was like,
Yeah,
yes.
it's so good. It was like last year. I was like, what? How long has this been going on? So game changer immediately. So pick the time and schedule your
So
listings.
100%. I know when I saw that last year, I was like, yes, this is one thing you guys did really good.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Yes,
what is your
absolutely.
favorite platform to list on? I mean, obviously listing wise, easy. But like, what is when you think about a platform and what it does for you, what it brings for you, what excites you?
So my main niche is clothing and shoes. And I've even, now that I've been doing live sales, I've understood that you really do have to even make that more niched. Like I was doing men's, kids, and women's because I go to the bins or, different opportunities come and I can buy a bunch of stuff. I've really had to fine tune that down to women's clothing. If it's new merchandise, I feel like it still does very well on both platforms, but I really think people will spend more on Poshmark. I don't know why. I have a bunch of Madewell jeans right now. I'm having them sell a lot better on Poshmark than I am on eBay. eBay, I feel like still does really well with both thrifted and new. So I say that just to say, like, depending on what it is that someone's listening to, whatever their focus is, I think men's does really well on eBay. I think Poshmark wants to have men there, but their customer base isn't fully there for that. So eBay, men's clothing, kids clothing, new, but thrifted really. Poshmark, I feel like does super well with new clothing and it tends to pay really well.
So do you like, with those categories that you just said that do really well on eBay or Poshmark, when you're doing your listings, do you focus on that category? Like, okay, men's does well on eBay. Do you cross-post on Poshmark? Also, just focus on eBay. And then vice versa with new, do you just do Poshmark?
Right. This was a new development.
Right. This was a new development. So the beginning of every year, we do an analytical, like, what was our best sellers? How are we trending in different in different categories? What did better on what platform? And so in that, which was only like a month and a half ago now at this point, that was when we realized, like, this is what's happening in the market. And I think it really correlates with what's happening in the retail market right now as far as like new merchandise is doing a lot better on these platforms because there's a huge flood of retailers that didn't sell as much as they typically do. So there's a huge discount on that stuff right now in just the retail world. But I will still continue to cross list everything that's on eBay onto Poshmark. But my new items that I'm picking up, I'm thinking about what is it that I want to focus more on. And I'm just going to not pick up men's and kids clothing anymore unless I get like a lot of something or a palette and it has that stuff in it and I have no choice. But I will primarily try to focus on women's clothing and then just have that be repurposed everywhere.
Nice. See, I'm finding just the opposite. I'm finding that, and you mentioned Poshmark and men's clothes. I so agree. Poshmark doesn't have as many men's clothes because so many people on Poshmark when they started out, and Poshmark had this how long has Poshmark been active? Since
like 10, 11 years.
Like 10, 11 years, I think.
So I say
It's
about
been
a decade.
Yeah.
The main focus on
Yeah.
Poshmark originally was women's pieces.
Right.
But as more
Right.
and more sellers got in the game, they were like, okay, well, I've got some men's pieces, why don't I just come bring those out there? Then more men were joining Poshmark, and men typically sell men's clothes.
Yeah.
They don't typically sell
Yeah.
women, so you see more men's in the market. I am finding that men's actually do really well for me. I have a harder time selling
That's
women's
good.
pieces than I do men's pieces because for me, it feels like women's pieces are more saturated. And for me, I live in South Dakota, so my sourcing is limited. I live minimum 45 minutes from a thrift store, and our thrift stores in Sioux
Yeah.
Falls, when you have small town surrounding areas, you don't have nice quality pieces. And shoes, forget it. They have shoes, but they're either overly priced or they're just garbage shoes. So it really kind of depends on what state you live in as to what you can source too, and how you source.
I agree.
I agree. That's one of the things that I really try to say, even in my own like Instagram or YouTube, is I can give people education, but a big portion is how can you source, what state do you live in, and what brands do you have access to? Because right now we're talking about categories, but I think if we went down to like brands and you started listing off some of the brands, I would be like, oh yeah, I can never find that. So it's more of like what is in your local area, doing your own research. I dropped off packages at the post office the other day, and the girl behind the desk is like, okay, so I'm starting on eBay, and she's found my YouTube channel, and so she's been trying to learn, and she's like, what would you price this at? And like, it's not even stuff that I would typically pick up, but I was like, you've got to do the analytical work, because I don't know what the market has done in the last 90 days, and I don't know that market because that's not something I naturally pick up, but there's a customer out there that wants what you have, and you just have to do the own work yourself. So I can give the basics, but I still think that people still have to put in a little bit of effort to identify how this business is going to work for them. The good news is reselling is so broad that this business can be so vast for so many.
No, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think that and sourcing niche, like so many people, like you're on Whatnot shows or, even Poshmark shows, people are starting to ask, where do you get your inventory? And a lot of resellers are hesitant to say for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of resellers that buy pallets have had issues with that pallet. And if they're recommending that company and that person gets a bad pallet, then they feel really bad when the person comes back saying, I bought a pallet from the same company you did, mine was garbage, what's up with this? And then they're really mad at the person. So they're mindful of just even saying it because of that. But when it comes to brands and doing research on the COG and sourcing and finding pallets, I think it's more important for you to find the sourcing yourself and doing your own research, because you don't learn it doing it through other people.
Yeah.
It's just like what you were saying with brands. You're never going to learn what works well for you unless you do it yourself. That's part of the reselling journey, is the research. In fact, I would say if you're not researching your own stuff, your own COG, your own prices, you're completely missing out on a big factor of what it is to be a reseller and provide a good quality product to your customer. Because if you didn't do that research yourself, how are you going to know what you're giving your customer?
Right.
Right.
So I'm learning from me. I know I used to be that person when I started out, even on lives. Okay, where'd you get your stuff? But I've learned over months now that if I'm not doing the research myself, I'm neglecting doing that work myself for my own business and knowing what works for me, so that in the future, okay, now you're looking at, like you say, statistics, you don't know until you go through the challenge, right?
Right.
So I was really glad you brought that up.
And even more so with
pallets, because I did that all last year. I got truckloads and pallets, and the biggest thing, someone could say, where did you get that? And they could be in Florida. I'm in Oregon. The places that are local to me, the shipping is not hardly anything. So it makes sense for me. But if you were to go to that same place, it's going to be probably $3,000 for it to be shipped across the United States. That's not going to make sense for you for cost of goods. So suddenly we're not just talking about how much did I pay per unit, but now we're also including the shipping cost. The other thing that I've seen is, like, there's been wholesalers that have gotten inundated with a bunch of people wanting to buy, that they go under because they can't keep up with the demand. And then they try to do certain things and they get screwed over, and then they end up having to, like, file bankruptcy or something. So the whole wholesaler market is a very interesting market. It's kind of the wild, wild west. But I think that's why people are like you said, you still got to do your research. I have a YouTube video that goes really in depth about how to,
when
like,
I was thinking about pallets, and my husband and I talked about it. We're like, I am walking away from this because there's too much threat involved for me, where my business model is right now. So you doing those videos was hugely helpful for me to make a quality decision. So I thank you for doing those.
Oh yeah, I really wanted people, because I felt like that was the best thing that I could do, is help them understand the risk. Danelli's always been really good at saying, like, if you were to throw a bunch of money into a garbage can and light it on fire, would you be comfortable with that? Would your business be able to move forward? And if the answer is no, then don't make the risk. Because like we ended up losing $8,000 with a 8 set of pallets that we had gotten that we were told it was one thing, and it was like majority damaged or unbranded stuff, and we had to figure out how to sell that. I got to a place after that where I was like, I don't like this. And I actually had someone comment on my YouTube video recently about this, of like, because I started talking about like Amazon live sales and doing product review videos on Amazon and why that makes more sense for me. And someone was like, well, I don't like that because you're being dishonest about having the item and doing a review on it. Whereas like these people that are buying pallets, like they're being honest because they bought the income or like the pallets. And I'm like, really? Because what I see is a pallet that if it's damaged, you still have to figure out how to sell it. And you've got to figure out how to pitch that. And that felt inauthentic to me. Like something's damaged and I still have to be like, oh, but you could DIY it. I didn't like that at all.
Well, you were talking too about the cost of the pallets being shipped. I did an interview with the gal last week, and she does whatnot auctions, and she auctions the pieces, but she's also selling pallets because she gets so much inventory. She's actually selling pallets to other resellers through Instagram. She was saying the minimum cost for those pallets to ship no matter where is $800 to $1,000 just to ship the pallet. So even $300 is a small fee compared to a lot of other pallets. And she says most people don't realize it, but you're paying $2,500 just for the pallet, and then you got to add another $1,000 most likely just to ship that item, and then you have to incorporate that cost. What is that cost per piece? So I don't think people really fully comprehend what is truly involved and the risk that's involved in pallets. Now, I'm not saying they don't work, because a lot of people are making it work, but I know a lot of people are using credit cards to do that, and that's a scary avenue.
Absolutely, especially if you get one bad pallet. Like it can just be the one bad pallet that sets you under. And the other thing that I've noticed too, I'm going to draw a blank. What was it? I don't know if I can think about it. I'll come back
So
to
since
it.
we're talking about pallets, now you've been reselling for 7 years. You've done mainly Poshmark and eBay. And then you guys joined Whatnot. You brought Jeff home, and you guys were doing Whatnot. How many months did you guys do Whatnot?
We did Whatnot from July when it first started until December of 22. And then Poshmark Lives has been for over a year now.
So now, when it first started out, tell me, were you guys nervous about doing the pallets on Whatnot? I mean, tell me your process and your thinking, and because I know so many people are asking about pallets. So, and you have been knee deep in all this, and you're now doing a different direction. So if anybody I know of right now has had a good experience, bad experience overall, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but you have some experience to share. Would you mind being open about some of this? When you first started out on Whatnot, were you guys nervous about it?
So
I started out on Whatnot. Jeff was still working full time. I started it. I really liked the community. I really loved the platform. I feel like they really are above the, like, for being a brand new app, they have a lot of good features already established. Like they grew. And I got to talk with a lot of the Whatnot people. They will interview you and be like, what do you want? What are you looking for? And it was really cool that a platform was listening. Platform was, like doing it, actually saying, following through, basically. So I wasn't nervous in that capacity. They were just still young. And so the customer base was, truth be told, a lot of resellers. So a lot of resellers are there not just buying stuff for themselves, they're buying stuff to flip. So I could be talking about a $176 free people item, and I'm like, we're going to start this at $20. To the reseller, that still doesn't make sense if they're trying to flip it. But for a customer, that's like a smoking deal. And so on Whatnot, that was where in January of 2023, I had to go, I am spending time 2 to 3 times a week doing videos or like lives on here. And at the time, I then incorporated Posh Lives. And the amount of money that I was making in a month on Whatnot, I was making in 1 to 2 lives on Poshmark. Why? Because as we've already understood, Poshmark has been around for a while. They started with building a customer base. So if I'm again talking about that same Free People item for $20, that made sense for the customer. Unfortunately, I would say now because we had a high with Whatnot and we had a high with Posh Lives. I think that everyone's doing what we see sometimes happening with like those that are on like Amazon FBA, where everyone's trying to be the lowest. And unfortunately, by doing that, we end up cutting the value of our product. And then someone will bid on it and it's only one person and you started it at $3 and now you're losing money, primarily if you're also trying to buy pallets, because I guarantee you're spending $5 to $10 per unit for the items in that pallet. And so $3 gives you cents. That's not even including your cost of goods. So I think the biggest thing, if I just wanted to encourage someone that wants to do lives, is start with a consistent schedule, start to build that community over on either Whatnot or Poshmark, because I do feel like Whatnot has started to build more of their customer base there. But I am still seeing a lot of people going from Whatnot to Poshmark, so I feel like that says something about where the customers are. What was I going to say? So start with a consistent schedule, show up regularly, use products that you can start with, so that's probably thrifted item stuff, work into doing wholesale or doing pallets, but also start your bids at a price that will actually cover the cost of the item and maybe a little bit more. I have a friend, she strictly does boutique. She pays a lot of money for her boutique items. She will start her bids at like $30 to even $40. And I mean, she'll do clearance when she'll like clear out her season, but she set that standard that this is the quality that I'm going to be able to provide you guys with. I'm spending a lot of money out. This is what I have to start at. And it was slow when she first started, but she's now at a place where she can command that price because she trained her audience to be used to that price. And she wasn't willing to devalue her time and her resources to do that. She's done that successfully. And she was only doing like one show a week. She's now up to doing like more, but for a very long time, that's what she did.
How long did it take her to establish that mental thought for her customers that this is the price bracket? How long did it take her to build up that community?
She told Posh Fest that I think it was about 6 months of really putting in that work and investing that time with her customers. I mean, she even also wrote like handwritten letters. She really tried to do something for her customers to help them know that she set herself apart. She was very, not relatable, but just wanted people to know that, like, I'm invested in your life. I appreciate you coming back. I want to hear how you're doing. She brought in care to our customers.
Poshmark, not Whatnot. She was doing Poshmark.
This is Poshmark.
Okay. So that's, and you know what? I think people need to hear this. I know for me, I've gone back and forth on Whatnot. Whatnot has, I don't know if you've been watching lives, watching lives on Whatnot lately.
No,
Okay.
no, not really.
I'm still trying to find my way. I was doing men's clothes, and that's been doing well for me. I started out with doing kids' clothes, and women's clothes just doesn't work for me on Whatnot. There's just way too many people. But the issue that I'm seeing on Whatnot, and I've seen other resellers on there trying to sell their item, is there were so many people in the last year who were doing dollar starts that it's become a thing that if you don't do a dollar start, people don't want to be in your show because they can't get something for $1. And when people try to start their items out, they're good quality items. Like my men's clothes, I'm not here to do it for free. So I'm going to be putting it up for at least my COG, some profit, and then fees, right? So if even I start something out at $7, people are like, well, why aren't you starting this out at $1? Why am I not getting $1 show? It doesn't matter what type of clothes you do, though. People are automatically expecting that dollar start because so many people started that out. It's just this thing where you can just get something for free. More resellers are realizing that they're losing money and they're trying to start it out at a higher price bracket, and people are leaving those shows because it's not a dollar start.
I had a show where because I could never do it. Absolutely not. absolutely not. Would not do that. I even went as low as like $5. That was kind of my lowest that I would do. I had brand new Nike items that were not selling for $5 on Whatnot. And that was kind of my breaking point where I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to wait around for my customer base to come with this when I need to make money. Like this is so much time doing these live sales. I don't think people realize, but you made the point of Jeff coming home full time. We were collaboratively pulling all the items for the show, hanging them up, numbering them, listing them in the show, marketing the show, doing the show, shipping the show, and then I was still stressing out of where am I going to get my next inventory. That was 16-hour days, like 7 days a week. And it was finally in the holiday season, my mom got diagnosed with cancer. And in January, I started to feel like we needed to make a change. And then in January, my 6-year-old at the time got rushed to the hospital with
I remember you guys
appendicitis.
doing videos about all this. This was crazy.
But to me, it was honestly, I do have a faith and a belief, and I felt like God was like, you need to slow down. You are doing too much, and you're sacrificing the reason you started. And I was like, I can't keep going like this. My family needs me. We didn't know what last year was going to hold for my mom. Fortunately, the chemo pill that she's been taking has been helping. She was supposed to do surgery last summer. She didn't need it. But still, nonetheless, like she's my daycare provider. She's, a very involved person in our life. And so I was like, I can't like just keep hustling for something, hoping it's going to get better when I have so much happening in my family right now that needs my attention. I can't keep ignoring it, basically.
So you went from Whatnot over to Poshmark. I know a lot of people missed you guys too. I know a Posh Life. She's super sweet. I love that gal. She's still on there trying to cook it too. And I think people are just kind of struggling and whatnot because again, they're trying to change the thinking that we're not all doing dollar stars. We're actually here to make a living. You know. That mentality needs to change on Whatnot. Until that mentality changes, people are going to struggle. Plus, they opened it up so that anybody can qualify now. You don't have to go through qualification on Whatnot. Wow. They're literally letting anybody join Whatnot. And they have a lot of categories now, but it's oversaturated.
And the same thing's happening with Poshmark. They just recently did a training, like you can sign up to do a training, and they just go through a quick video, and then they instantly get access. So the floodgates are opening up over there too, which again, I feel like there needs to be more education on how to be successful without cutting everyone. It's the same concept like I mentioned. I remember hearing when I first started as a reseller, people doing Amazon FBA. It was kind of an unwritten rule that you don't all try to drop your prices because you're going to completely devalue this item. Like if we're talking about like this card, you're devaluing the card. Now we're going to go to like 15 cents, but now no one's going to make money and this one's going to go essentially out of business. So I think that there needed to be a education on how to do these kinds of sales.
So seeing what you've seen in the last year, you're still doing Posh Lives, I presume?
I'm doing them, but not nearly as much as I was before. And I always mentioned this. I watched a ton of people, and I kind of forecasted this, but I watched a lot of people doing really well with live sales, and they're like, I'm going to close down my eBay store. I'm going to close down my Poshmark store. I'm only going to do lives. And I'm like, what happens if you go without a voice for 2 weeks? What if you get sick and you're out of commission and you can't be live? Like your passive income you just sold. There's no way for you to make money in your sleep anymore. I know that Whatnot has where you can have static listings now, but I still think people are just used to doing the live sales. And so have they gone away with that?
No, I was thinking the other factor to this too is that a lot of big sellers are trying to have people come in and work for them and do lives so that they can step back a little bit. But when you have a community that's expecting to see you, and you have somebody come in and work for you, your shows dramatically drop until they get comfortable with that person. It takes weeks or months for them to get comfortable with that new dynamic of that person. And then if you're coming and doing shows every periodically and still having them do it, you've got that group of people that have been following you and built up a community where they're now trying to go back and forth between two people, and some people like one person, some people like another person. So you have seriously dramatically possibly put a huge kibosh on how your selling is going on that platform because you brought a new face in.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah, because
absolutely.
that was one of the
Yeah,
things I
because
have
that was
always
one of the
said I
things I
love
have
about
always
live
said I
sales
love
is
about live
now
sales
people
is
get to
now
see
people
the
get to
name
see the
behind the
name
item.
behind
It's
the
no
item.
longer
It's
people
no
getting angry
longer
in
people getting
returns
angry in
because
returns
they don't
because
realize they're
they
talking to a
don't
person.
realize they're
Like
talking
they've
to a person.
genuinely
Like they've
spoken to me
genuinely
on live
spoken to me
sales.
on
So
live
much to the
sales.
point that
So
like
much to
if
the
people
point that
got
like
something
if
that was
people
wrong
got
size
something
or
that
a
was wrong
spot maybe that
size
I
or a
missed,
spot maybe that I
they were
missed, they
so
were so
understanding. Or they're
understanding
like, I'm so
when
sorry to
they're like,
bother
I'm so
you, but
sorry to bother
there's a hole.
you,
I'm
but
like, go
there's
for
a
it.
hole.
Like,
I'm
let's
like,
do a
go for
return.
it.
Like,
Like,
no
let's do a
problem.
return.
That
Like,
was my
no problem.
mistake.
That was
And
my
they're like, yeah,
mistake.
I,
And
I,
they're
I
like,
kind of
yeah,
figured you
I
had that
kind of
mistake.
figured you
So
had that
that was
mistake.
one of the
So
things that I
that was
loved
one of
about
the
live
things that I
sales is
loved about live
people
sales is
got to know
people got to know
me
me
and Jeff
as
as
me
Jeff,
and Jeff as
and
Jeff.
they
And
understood.
they
Like they're like, you're
understood.
human,
Like, they're
you
like,
get it.
you're
Versus
human,
like
you get
eBay.
it.
Sometimes
Versus
people
like
are
eBay.
like,
Sometimes people
how
are
dare you
like,
make this
how
mistake? I'm
dare
like,
you
I'm
make this mistake? I'm like,
sorry.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
human.
I'm human.
Yeah, I think I have a group that I'm a part of. What literally the top seller of men's clothes over the last 15 years. He has a group that he does, and I'm a part of that
Second
group.
sport.
Huh?
Second
Yeah,
sport.
I
Yeah.
love this group.
Yeah.
I've
He's
learned
awesome.
He's awesome.
so much,
Yeah.
and not just for
Yeah.
Poshmark, but just in reselling in general. Just a thinking point. Anyway, one of the things I posted on the group the other day on Facebook, and I asked, reselling, do we think that lives are going to overpower, platforms? Which one do we think is going to be better for the near future? Because there's a lot of people on Whatnot right now and Instagram saying, oh my gosh, lives are going to overtake. Again, it's drama. But I wanted to get thoughts and feedback from really renowned sellers that have been doing this for a while, that have seen things come and go. I wanted their thoughts on, instead of drama, on this idea of, is
Yeah.
reselling going to
Yeah.
overtake, or lives going to take. And one thing that Tech said, he said, you have to keep in mind that there are a lot of people who like the drama about reselling in lives, but you have to wait hours to see something coming through a pallet, unless it's
Yeah.
actually posted in the
Yeah.
live. Versus just going on, researching a product on eBay or Poshmark, they find what they want and they just purchase it. They don't have to wait an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours in a live. So
Yeah.
most of the people who are in these
Yeah.
lives, they're looking for social interaction. And I think
Right.
that's become a big
Right.
thing on these lives, is social interaction, because a lot of people, after being shut down and all this other craziness that's been going on, people are looking for an outlet to connect with other people, because they have been so downsized as far as their community, that lives have become a community for people to actually connect. And I think
Right.
Yeah.
that's what a big part of
Yeah.
lives has become, is just a social interaction. Because the
Oh,
majority, would you
absolutely.
say the
Oh,
majority of the
absolutely.
people who go on to lives aren't there to buy, they're there to talk and communicate.
And hey now, yeah,
And hey
a
now,
thousand
yeah,
percent. And then
a
another
thousand
reason
percent.
why
And
I
then
really
another
did
reason
like
why
it
I
when we
really
first
did like
started.
it when we
Again,
first started.
live sales
Again,
came around in
live
like
sales came around in like
2022, so it
2022,
was
so
at
it
the
was
end
at
of
the end
everyone
of
being in quarantine
everyone
for such
being
a
in
long time.
quarantine for
So
such a long
we
time.
were
So we
craving
were
that,
craving
and that was
that.
the
And
hardest
that was
reason
the
of me
hardest
like taking
reason
a
of
step
me
back
like
with doing
taking a
the live
step
sales,
back
is
with
I
doing the live
loved
sales,
the
is I
community that we
loved
have
the
built. We
community that we
had
have built. We have
like I
had
got to know
like
these
I got to
people. These
know these
people went through
people. These people
cancer
went through
scares. These
cancer
people went
scares. These
through
people
highs
went
and lows
through
with
highs and
family.
Yeah.
I
lows with
got
family. I
invested in
got
their life just as
invested
much
in
as
their
they
life
were
just as
mine.
much as they
That
were
was the
mine.
hardest part,
That was
was
the hardest
realizing
part,
like
was
I can't
realizing
keep
like
doing this
I
for my
can't keep doing
family's
this
sake,
for
but
my
we have
family's sake,
such a
but we
great
have such a
community
great
that
Right.
is here
community
with
that
us.
has been
Right.
here with us.
So let's talk about this switch. You guys realized, I know Jeff went back to work full time, and you guys realized, okay, we need to reevaluate. Before we jump into the next topic that I have for you, for somebody who does want to jump into lives, because lives can be huge for one person, okay?
Right.
If you find a
Right.
way for it to work, we're not saying in this interview, guys, that lives are a bad thing, but there are definitely important factors to keep in mind with lives, things that people
Right.
don't think about.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
somebody does want to do
Yeah.
lives, whether they've been reselling for a long time or they're just starting out and reselling, having been down this rabbit trail, what would you recommend for them to do it right, and be able to make a go of it?
You know, it's so
You know,
hard
it's
because
so hard because kind of like what we mentioned with reselling is there's a market for everything. Like I know
Trends are trash.
Trends are Trash. He's on Poshmark right now. He does a lot of like vintage or just like old school classic tees, like graphic tees. And I wouldn't start with that. I wouldn't think about that, you know? And so I think that if you come in with a plan, it's going to be really easy for you to maintain that. So one of the things that I think we kind of did not so well is I wanted to reach every audience. Like I wanted to have items for like a mom who's getting stuff for dad and the kids and her. But I think if you can find a flow of like where to get inventory and you're like consistently either you're shopping for like the graphic tees or you've got a good source of getting graphic tees in, or it's just women's clothing, or it's like all brand new women's clothing. If you have a source, then you can create a plan around that because your audience is going to get used to you having a specific product. Another good example is Mama Chicky. She does plus size. She does really good with plus size. If I throw a plus size item in my show, it will not sell because I don't have that audience there. I haven't developed that relationship with people that they know they can come to me for all the torrid stuff. So I think that if you can get known for your product, it's going to be easier for you to have a long lasting community while at the same time having your personality. People are going to love that. And honestly, don't try to be anything that you're not. I've seen some people, they're very soft spoken, they're very slow when they talk, and they have an audience that loves that. Then there's also the people that are super high upbeat, and they have an audience too. There's people that have drama, and there's people that have positivity. Like,
Boy, are you
people
nailing
will
it.
be attracted to whatever they want.
I've seen so many sorts. I've seen some shows where they're effing like every other word and they're jamming this blasting hardcore beat it up music and people are and I'm just like, oh, I left. I couldn't even my nerves couldn't even handle it. Sorry, but I just that surprised me.
Yeah. So if you can find your source, if you can start to get known for that, if you can think of your lives like a TV show where you're on every Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard or like whatever it is, something I always taught people in my YouTube channel was don't go on the dot of the hour because there's a bunch of shows that'll happen at that time and you get inundated with all the same notifications at once. But if you're on at like 55, or 50 or 72 or even like maybe you're 11:11, like something that's random but also sticks in someone's brain, it's going to be likely that people are going to remember your show because you're on the same time every week, and it's also unique and your notifications might be more apt for people to see it. But you do have to come in with a strategy and you also have to be ready to do the long game. So whether that is like doing stuff at the bins, whether that, I mean, people go bins shopping and they will do lives while they're there and be shopping and then selling the items. But don't try to be everyone. Don't try to be something you're not. Really think about what is it that you have either in your local area that makes sense for you or what inventory can you have shipped to your door and just stay consistent with
And
it.
remember too that it's not just being live, like you said. There's so much more prep involved. So many people think that when you go live, boom, you're just live and that's it. It's not.
Yeah.
There's a sourcing time. If there's cleaning time, if you wash your clothes beforehand, some people do, some people don't. But a lot of people forget that if you sell like 50 items, it takes time to ship 50 items. And then you have to, I don't have a post office pickup here at my house. I have to go down to the post office. Fortunately for me, it's a 30-second drive. But for some people, that's a 15-minute drive back and forth. So, and time away from your families to do that. And if you have pallets, you have to sort through those pallets and figure out, okay, you've been through that. You have good pieces in a pallet and then there's garbage. What do you do with all this garbage? There is so much more involved in live selling than people realize than just putting a piece up saying, hey, yay, I sold something.
Right.
So,
I think that draws people to the live sales, but it definitely, like, I used to teach Zumba classes, same concept. Like, I had to learn the dances outside of the actual practice time or like the go time. So there's a lot of work that you've got to do before you're live.
So now you're still doing some Poshmark lives, but you transitioned though. You've got a lot of different things going on too. You've stepped back a little bit from YouTube, I've noticed. You're doing a lot of Instagram videos and shorts. You're doing some series on different things. I know you've been doing the ADHD, but you've also changed. Now you're still selling on Poshmark and eBay, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so is that your main focus in reselling right now is Poshmark and eBay? You've kind of just gone back to listing?
I've never stopped listing, and unfortunately I had to stop my YouTube channel because of live sales. Live sales was taking so much of my time that I didn't have enough time to edit videos, and I was trying to hire an editor. Then I had her with me for a long time, and then she went back to college. So, but I wasn't able to like keep up because I was doing like 3 to 5 sales a week, and that's a lot of work. So yeah, when Jeff went back to work in February, we still have always consistently listed on Poshmark and eBay. So I'd always keep some of my inventory, like if I got a pallet, I would do a couple live sales to try to help pay off that pallet immediately. And then I would take some of the items and start listing it, because then I could hold on to that and maybe hold out for a better price point than just trying to sell it for a quick flip on live sales. And that's what helped me maintain getting more pallets, was doing a live sale, getting that money back, throwing some of it up in my like Poshmark eBay store, and then buying the next thing basically. So in February, when Jeff went back to work last year, he was like, whatever you want to do with the pivot that makes sense for our family, I support you. But we both made the executive decision that we weren't going to hustle to the next scale, because kind of what you mentioned, the next scale for us was getting a warehouse so that way we could hire employees to help run our live sales, so that way we didn't have to do it all the time. But we already gone through why that's not even always the best bet. And there's a lot more overhead involved with that. So I started to ask myself the question. It's funny, when I actually first started my YouTube channel, I was the mom doing the tug of war. I wanted to be home with my kids, but I wanted to financially support my family. But when I was at work, I felt guilty because I needed to be at home with my kids. So I had this mission to try to find passive income. And I actually had a YouTube video that's still in the files somewhere from 2017 of all the different like passive income things that I was trying. And reselling was just the thing that took off for me at the time. So that's why I kept going with reselling instead of doing all these others. But now I'm kind of back to that. I'm back to what is more passive that can continue to give us essentially, like, you do maybe some work on the front end, but then it becomes like a residual after. And so like one of the things that I love about reselling is you can, when you just list, you can have stuff selling in your sleep essentially. You still have to deal with returns, you still have to deal with people's questions, so there isn't as hands-off, but that's why I started to go into like Amazon product review videos. The idea of I could do a product review on like this tumbler, they've got thousands in stock, if they sell 100 of them just by watching my video and I make a commission, that's passive. I don't have to deal with the customer, I don't have to deal with the shipping, like that I can actually make money from. So I'm still doing my reselling business, but I'm just exploring what are some other things that I can do more passively, and then I'm sharing it. I'm going to start up my YouTube again and share about that. And I also, like I said, I was in the financial world, so I know a lot about saving and investing, and I want to just help the parents that had that same frustration with, like I did at home, where it's like, I'm home, but I need to make money, but when I'm working, I'm not there for my kids. I want to be able to blend those worlds together, so that way families can actually make the money that they need for their family.
And it is such a hard juggle. It truly, truly is. I understand where you're coming from. I was a stay-at-home mom. My husband and I are empty nesters of 6. And I didn't want to work. I wanted to stay at home because I wanted to homeschool. And for me, it was really important. My mom always worked. It's just a whole thing. And I wanted to raise the kids that God gave me. I didn't want somebody else raising them. You know, we're also Christians too, and God is a really huge part of our lives. He is the number one in our lives. And it was hard for me though, because my mom was always working. So even in my brain now, what can I do to help my husband make money, instead of actually the gift that God gave me to be a stay-at-home, wife. Right. We started my reselling business back up just to kind of help, because we made a shift out of state and everything. But a lot of moms feel guilty, because when you truly deeply love your husband, you want to help him in any way you can. It's just a natural instinct God gave us, right? And a lot of moms want to be able to bring in extra income. And it's not always easy, but being at home, to juggle being at home and having the kids home too. There's a lot of moms who started doing reselling because that was the way they could accomplish it. And I think that's
Right.
one of the reasons why reselling has blown up so much in the last 5-6 years. It's because so many moms are looking for a way to bring money in and still be home with their kids and actually be with their kids, you know?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I
and
guess that's another
I
reason
guess
why
that's
I've
another
started to
reason
look
why
at
I've
other
started to
options
look at other options as well
my
is
health.
my health. As this last year, I've been in the process of like trying to figure out what's going on with like where do we want to take our business. You know, I get diagnosed with ADHD, and then I start to see like some of the same things happening to my boys, and I'm like, wait, I think they have it too. And there's issues happening at school, and they're saying they're just being boys, and I'm like, no, that's not right. I need to advocate for them. So we pull them, we bring them home, and we're doing homeschooling right now. Meanwhile, I also find out I have hypermobility, which is basically like your tendons pull and stretch more than your muscles. And so then that's why stuff goes out. Like I can get out of a car and my hip pops out of socket. And then I'm in excruciating pain. And I actually just came back from a retreat in January where I found out a lot. It's still been kind of overwhelming. I'm still working through it, but I have a lot of nervous system issues that are happening. So like my hands in circulation, they go numb sometimes if I stand up really fast, or not fast, I just get up. I get dizzy. Well, that's because my blood is pooling. It doesn't circulate through my body right. And I'm now being aware of that. I've ignored a lot of the pain that I've been dealing with, thinking I'm just getting older, I just got to deal with it. But this was triggered after having my 3 pregnancies in 5 years. I just was in constant pain, like even sitting here, my hip hurts. So I came back from the retreat. I got sent to Portland, and then we had to stay the night there. And Portland's always been where we get our clothing. We go to the bins out there. And Jeff was like, well, we're waiting for your luggage to come back in. Why don't we go to the bins? You know, and so they bring out the brand new bins, and that first thing that everyone does is like goes in really quick. Everyone's trying to grab stuff really fast. And as I'm doing it, I'm like, my hip is hurting right now. I make one quick shift and my neck pops. And I'm like, I've been dealing with pain that I've been ignoring that has been coming from reselling. And I started to realize that as I've been talking about more passive income opportunities, more people are saying, I too can't get out of bed. I too am struggling. I can't go to the thrift stores for hours on end and look for stuff. And I'm trying to look for ways to make income. So it's back to the same thing of like, I want to help support my family, but even just thrifting is too much for my body. So I feel like that's really my mission right now. Not only am I kind of in that same boat, acknowledging that, realizing I need to slow down and heal my body, but there's other people like that have fibromyalgia, like have endometriosis. There's so many conditions that people have that they're silently struggling with, and they want to make money, but they can't do this kind of work. So it's a fun adventure. I feel like I'm going to be able to help more people now, going back to essentially why I started my YouTube channel.
Wow. That's a lot.
It is.
It is.
I have done so
much soul searching this last year, but it's been so good, and I feel like God has really directed me through this whole process. I've just had to be willing to accept and being willing to go, okay, I do need the help, and understanding my limitations and just knowing how I can
So
get
for
help
you,
to fix
reselling, the issue with reselling right now for you is just being able to be outsourcing. I mean, the aspect of sitting down and listing things with these medical issues that are going on for you. Would reselling ever be something you'd have to put on the side for a while, or are you trying to find a way to just push through that?
So fortunately, a lot of my product comes to my doorstep right now. Like I said, we went to the bins, but that was that first aha for me of like, oh, I've actually been making my symptoms worse when I was like trying to do so much work. And even live sales after a while, like if I'm standing for too long, like we will close off the show and I just bend over and I'm just there. And my husband's like, that was a lot for you, wasn't it? I was like, my body hurts. Because you're holding the items up here for like long periods of time, and like, so my hands start to get tingly. Like it's been something now that I know, I'm like, okay, these were actually signs that I was dealing with something, but I didn't know. So I don't think we'll ever have to let go of reselling, because again, we can photograph items, we can list them, put them in our inventory. I will say with how our shelves are right now, the times that I've had to like pull from the highest shelf to get stuff to like ship, man, that hurts my body right now. So I'm definitely very, I hate to say it, but like fragile. and I need to get these symptoms, these flares that I've been dealing with, basically in remission. And then I can go back to strength training, because that was something else I was trying to do. I kept trying to strength train, kept trying to work with trainers, and like I do 3 days. I'm like, I'm doing awesome, form is good. And then I'd get injured. And then I'd have to go back to the chiropractor. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, I'm a fitness instructor. Like this, I should be perfectly fine, but I had underlying issues that were happening. So I think reselling can still be very easy for me to do. I just have to take it slow. I have to be willing to accept that.
So when you source, because you list on eBay and Poshmark and you do lives periodically, do you do the same types of items listing as well as lives, or do you source separately for lives?
I was for the longest time buying stuff for my lives. Like for when I would go thrifting, it's like, oh, these brands actually do really good, or this style is really good, or the season, where it's summer, so swimsuits are a really good thing to have. So I would when I was first like buying stuff at thrift stores, now that I've gone more to like wholesale, and it's like I'm buying a ton of Piranha, or I'm buying a ton of Madewell, maybe I'll consider like, okay, these are, maybe we're in spring and I've got a bunch of sweaters. I'm like, okay, I'll list those, because when people are in live sales, they're thinking more about what can I wear right now, or what's in season right now versus like a sweater that was maybe last season. And if someone's going on vacation and they want to buy it in my store, they can. So I'm more like, again, analytical. I pay attention to what people are buying, and it's typically season, style. I've had to pay more attention to style than I ever have in my reselling business, because I feel like things are more trendy when they're buying stuff from lives versus brand. I think is more commonly known when you're listing stuff on like eBay.
Well,
and
and two, keep in mind that I've talked with quite a few people in the interviews that I've been doing. Reselling has changed a lot in the last year. 2 reasons. Sourcing has gone crazy. Thrift stores have jacked their prices through the roof, and online companies are noticing that more resellers are going to online sourcing because thrift stores are too expensive. They see this and they jack their prices through the roof. And a lot of people, I know this was the thing, even 6 months ago, people were buying boxes from the same company. Somebody would go on a YouTube channel, say, hey, I got this box, and then it's oversaturated. Like, you're talking about Prana and Madewell. Some of these brands that were doing really well a year ago, they were selling for $45, $50. You're lucky if you can sell them for $25 now, because they're just so oversaturated, people don't want them anymore.
Same with Skims. That was the rare brand. And now, like, I'm lucky to get maybe $12 on some of the items on
Skims was kind of
eBay.
replaced. What's the other brand that kind of was overtaken from Skims? There was another brand that people were selling on Whatnot. I don't remember the name of the brand, but Skims were really popular, and this other brand came in. Do you remember what brand I'm talking about? It's the same type of clothing. And there was a reseller that was doing really well with Skims, and then she switched gears to this other brand. I don't know if it was you or somebody else who was selling a live show not long ago, but yeah, people just aren't selling Skims very well anymore now. So that's a whole nother thing for reselling. My husband and I have been talking about this, is it's not just figuring out if lives are doing well for you, what platform to sell on, but even just getting inventory right now is getting harder and harder for a lot of people, because they just can't afford the thrift store prices, and online companies are taking advantage of the resellers that can't source the thrift stores. They're increasing their prices, so people are having a hard time right now sourcing, period.
I don't think it's just resellers, and this is something else. Lindy Glenn talked about this. She's another YouTuber. She created a bins store, so she buys truckloads of things from like Home Depot, or gosh, I think it's like Target, other places, and there are more bins stores like that, like the Amazon returns or the Target return liquidator stores. I think it went from like maybe a couple hundred across the United States a few years ago to now over 3,000 mom and pop shops that have to buy truckloads on a weekly basis to store or to have the amount of inventory they need for their store. And so we're not just competing with resellers anymore. We're competing with these mom and pop stores that are trying to get all this inventory as well. So that's another reason that the online market has also increased their prices.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really good point too. So there's just such a huge shift happening. I mean, a few years ago we were dealing with people not being able to get out at all, And now we're dealing with sourcing has just become crazy. And my understanding too from Instagram, somebody posted something about Instagram. Maybe you understand this better about a lot of the companies. And there's people on Whatnot that are making connections with these companies that have nice brands. They're selling directly to resellers instead of actually in the market. And they're getting these pieces and they're bringing them over to Whatnot and selling them. And people are like, where are you getting these brands? Because they're not, you can't find them anymore. You can't find Free People online anymore. You can't even say the name Lululemon anymore.
Right.
So
Yeah,
a lot of resellers are trying to figure out what is going on with reselling. It's just, it's kind of going bonkers right now.
I would agree.
I would agree, and I've heard talk too, because I've worked with different companies, and the companies have wanted to like work directly with these selling platforms, so that way they can. It's like they're the middleman. So like we'll use Whatnot for the example. Like Whatnot, the inventory is going to Whatnot. Whatnot wants that, so that way they can get it to their top sellers. So I guess I would like to say this. I kind of was going back and forth on if I wanted to or not. Don't look at stuff face value and think, oh, this is possible for me too. There are people that are getting legs up for different ways, whether it's financial or handed inventory. It looks like they're putting in a lot of that work, but it's not what's actually happening, and they're not going to say that, or maybe they can't if they have anything that's signed. Personally, I kind of saw the writing on the wall for a lot of that, and again, like I mentioned before, I kind of feel like reselling turned into the wild, wild west, and not in the best way, and I got to see some of the worst sides of people and even friends that I had, and I was like, this isn't me, this isn't who I am, this isn't how I do business, and I don't want to be involved with it. But it also, I think just the health stuff that happened in my family was kind of like, and this is why we're going to make the shift.
I totally understand about
I do
the
think
community too, because I've been doing pause shared shows, and I'm still doing the Whatnot shows for men. You do develop a wonderful community with some of these people, and they will come to your show just to support you whether they're buying or not. And I've actually made friends outside of the actual reselling world that I actually text with on a daily basis, and they, even though I've never met them, there's just this connection, and it's a beautiful thing. So it's really hard even for the idea for me, letting go of live sales in my brain. Maybe you can relate to this. I didn't want to give up and not let it work. I'm not one of those people that, okay, so this didn't work this way. Well, how can it work? Okay, it didn't work this way. Okay, this, doing women's didn't work. Okay, kids was working well for me, but I'm making so little profit for my time. Is it worth it for me to do that? So, trying to figure out how to make something work, I'm not one of those personalities that's willing to give up. Okay, am I so close to making it happen? If I step away now, am I walking away from something that could have happened? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Am I the only one that feels that way?
No, I'm that way too. I like to call myself a rebel in that, or stubborn. I'm kind of stubborn in that capacity, because I will do something till the end because I don't want it to fail. That whole element of like, you're just a few steps away from like your huge success, kind of like to your point. I think typically when that starts to happen, that's when I have to listen to my surroundings, where I think that I was feeling like I needed to let go of the amount of live sales we were doing, but I didn't know how, and I didn't want to quit. And it was the signs around me of like my family and the things that were happening. I'm like, and these are the reasons, like, they're essentially my signs that are telling me the store is closing. Basically, that's what I'm referring to, is like, it's not that I'm quitting on it. It's that season has shifted. This was my assignment in this season, or this was what I had to do in this season, but now we have to make a pivot. And I think that's entrepreneur's journey 101. Like, you have to be willing to move when things are kind of a gold mine, and then you have to be willing to shift when that's not the case. And I know like social media is a good example of that. There's like a new social media platform that comes out at least once a year that everyone's like, oh, is this the next big thing? Is this where I got to go next? And typically those that are really apprehensive to do that are the ones that get a little bit behind. So it's constantly evolving. We have to be willing to shift with it. But it is hard when we feel like we've quit, essentially.
Because my husband, he's gone back. He totally supports me no matter what I do. He thinks I should have flushed the lives a while ago, because it is so much work, and you're spending probably a half hour to an hour. And if you're like me, where you're still trying to get community, and sometimes you have 5 people in a show, and other times it's just you, and after 15 minutes you're like, okay, why am I still standing here when I could be listing items? And that's what my husband keeps saying to me. You're standing there spending time, and you may make a few sales here and there, but during that time, that's a lot of people say, like Tech, he's like, all that time you're spending there, you could have listed 5 things, and in 20 or 30, days, made a great sale, and you're not standing there by yourself. That's kind of the thinking,
Yeah.
Tell me your thoughts
Yeah.
on that. I know a lot of people have gone from listing to live sales and they make it work, but a lot of people are leaving live sales, especially on Whatnot, because they're finding it's just bombing for them. They weren't making money. They've actually gone back to jobs. They're working part-time, full-time
Yeah.
jobs because they were literally losing so much money. Would you recommend it, people? I'm trying to figure out how to phrase the question, and it's hard because my brain's doing the same thing as yours. How do you go about this? Reselling is changing a lot. How would you?
Agree. And
No, I
How would you
agree.
encourage
And
somebody
I
to
actually,
find what works for them, whether it's live sales or platforms, and then you got to figure out what platform. For me, I feel like I've gone back and forth with things so much, and my poor friend who I text with, she's a reseller. I feel like I'm constantly changing and evolving, and tech is like, you got to find what works and stick to it. Don't keep waffling. So, and then I'm thinking, am I walking away from what's working? You know?
mhm.
I
My husband's my sounding board, my sounding board. He's always been so good at listening, and again with my ADHD, I can brain dump on him and then repeat the same thing the following week and forget that I had this conversation the week
no.
before. And so he's so good at reminding me of like, this is the conversation we had after your last live. This is what we just did 2 weeks ago. This is what we just did a month ago. And I'm like, okay. I'm trekking. So he's very patient with me in that regard. I agree with tech from the standpoint of if it's working, just put your head down and keep going and stay consistent, because it will generate. I think sometimes the way that I can help get the emotion away from my decision making is when I look at the numbers, because again, I'm still very I'm numbers driven. And so to Tech's point, if I'm making maybe $100 in a 2-hour live sales span, but I have to do the shipping and load the show, now that's broken up even more. We're not even including the cost of goods at that point. In that time frame, how much could I have listed items, photographed items? I think that reselling is changing, but I do think that it's still profitable. I think that the ones that stick with something maybe past its expiration date is because they're trying to make it work, but it's still in the negative or it's still just not working. That's where I think the change needs to happen. And actually, last year, I wanted to have a podcast where I was going to talk with one of my local friends about the fact that there was a lot of people leaving reselling. Because even last year, before even this year's of live sales, there was a bunch of people going back to full-time work because they were seeing a lot of changes in the platforms. The platforms were pushing live sales, so they weren't pushing static listings as much. Now I feel like it's kind of balanced itself back out, but we're still just struggling with either whether it's like getting enough inventory that makes sense to do the listings, or people that are still trying to do live sales when it's just not
I
working
think
out.
when hearing you talk, for me, knowing me, I get onto Whatnot and here I see somebody doing really great with the show. And I'm thinking, okay, so what can I do to make that happen? For me, I want to be productive, and I want to have things happen like this person. My emotion gets caught up in it. Well, they can do it that way.
Yeah.
Why can't I? Then I don't want to give up because they're making it happen. But I know in my YouTube channel, I'm always telling everybody, you're not that person. Just because it's working for them doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And listing, when I'm consistently listing on eBay and Poshmark, I make sales. Women's and men's, especially men's. And for me, maybe I need to step back and think, okay, maybe I need to just take the Whatnot app off my phone, quit worrying about these lives, and just focus on what was working for me before lives on Whatnot became a thing. Because see, for me, I got introduced to Whatnot lives because of Harry Tornado. And I jumped onto it. I thought, oh, I got to give this a try. This could be so huge for us. And for the last year, I have been killing myself trying to make this thing work. And my husband keeps saying, why don't you just list? It was working before. Can you speak to that? It's so easy to see somebody else doing something and thinking it's working for them. Why don't I go that direction? Or you're following multiple people on YouTube channels. I've done this too, and I did a interview last week where she doesn't follow anybody on YouTube. She doesn't follow anybody in lives. She has a couple people that she buys from, but she literally does lives shipping and focus on her daughter. That's all she does. She doesn't watch these other videos, what other people sell. She knows what works for her, and she focuses on nothing but what sells for her.
So Vanessa Lau, she is a content creator. She's been on YouTube for a long time. She literally just did a video talking about this because she quit her this wasn't reselling, but she quit her 7-figure business on social media, and she explains the comparison trap. And I mean, I'll take ZK for an example. I love her to pieces.
ZK, that's
she does phenomenal.
Yeah, ZK. Yeah, sorry.
She does phenomenal on whatnot, and she is killing it. And I'm not saying that I ever compared myself to her, but I just think she's a good example. Jeff was really good at, I could see different people doing stuff, and I was like, why can't I do it like that? Like, I know I can be like them. And he's like, do they have a family? Do they have kids? Where are they located? And it made me realize, like, again, I have another friend who is really close to a bunch of Nordstrom pallets. That is not my life. I can't drive and buy pallets, but she's killing it on the live sales because of what she has access to. So my location is a rural community. I have multiple kids. I am homeschooling. I can't compare myself to these people that are doing live sales that don't live the same life that I live. Because I think that was where I finally had to realize, like, yes, I can do something and be successful, but it's not going to look like that. It's going to look a little different because I am my own life and I am my own personality, but I also have other priorities in my life. And even success on social media, like, I'll sometimes be like, oh my gosh, this person's killing it. My husband's like, do they have kids? I know why you say that, because they can devote more time to their craft. Like, I can't because I have kids. And so it's such a healthy bring myself back down to earth moment where I see someone and maybe idolize them to go, is that practical? Does that actually make sense for my life? If it does, then maybe, yeah, like, do they have tips of organization? Like, or do they have a nanny? Like, what is it that they're doing to make it happen? But I think that that's the biggest thing is it's easy to look at people's successes and go, okay, I can do that too, but you've got to look at all of the things that are making them have that success. Or another example is people that have like retail experience, or my friend who's doing a bunch of things with boutique. She has decades of private label experience. So she knew all these wholesalers before she ever started live sales. I had to build that relationship before I got there. So you've got to remember all the reasons why you see someone have their success. What things have they done in their life to get them where they are today?
All we're seeing is what's on the front and the face, like you and I are talking. We see each other. If we're in a live, hey, I see you running a live, but we have no clue what's going on in the background. It's like my son-in-law always talks about how he hates social media because people will post this really positive post and everybody's like, oh my gosh, your life is perfect. But they have no idea behind the scenes. They have a family member that's dealing with this, or maybe they have somebody who's on drugs and they got to deal with an alcoholic. You just don't know what is truly going on in that person's personal life or their extended family that they never talk about.
I'm doing my 15K in 100-day challenge right now. So I'm doing daily vlogs on like TikTok. And I've skipped days because Jeff was out of work for 2 weeks. And so instead of making money that was going towards debt, I had to use that as a check. And I was like, oh, but I can't, that can't apply to the debt days. So I'm not going to post those days. And then I finally realized I was watching somebody else I didn't know that they were doing a challenge, but they have like a 100-day challenge to try to make $100,000 a month, like monthly. That's what their goal is. And he had a day where he was talking about his challenges. And later he did on his TikTok how like it's important for people to see the highs and the lows, because if you make an entrepreneurial journey look like it's all highs, then it is a very gaslit, fictitious lifestyle that you are providing to people. Furthermore, people want to see the struggle because it makes them feel like they're not the only one. And so I started to go, whether I make my $150 a day or not, I need to post to this day, or even like I have a physically like draining day. My body is in pain, or I'm having a good ADHD day where I'm in ADHD paralysis. I'm going to show that because that's authentic and that's really what I'm dealing with. But I'm overcoming that and I'm still able to be an entrepreneur. I just have to understand these hard days, basically.
And you don't typically see that with lives. You just see the great stuff. I was watching, you probably know her, Mogi Beth. She did a video recently about how she went sourcing and she found squat. And everybody in the comments below was saying, it is so good to see a renowned reseller have a really crappy day and not have anything to list. It's
Mogi is also someone. She was someone that I do know her. We've had phone calls. She was someone that was doing truckloads and pallets. She stopped doing that because it did not make sense financially. She was doing it a lot more than a lot of these live sales that are doing. And it's amazing how much things have changed with the reselling inventory.
100%. Yeah. So tell us, things are going well for you. You've kind of found a groove for yourself. You now know what works for you and what doesn't after a long year's journey. I feel so bad for you that you've had to go through all this, but at the same time, those bad times, God always uses those for the good, and you have found how God is using those for the good in your life, which is incredible, and you be able to share that with people. Now this next year, you kind of know what works for you, what doesn't. You have the support of your family and your husband. What is in the next year for you? What's coming for you in reselling on Instagram, YouTube? What is your goal for this next year, personally and business-wise?
My goal personally is to get into remission with this pain that I've been dealing with. Like I said, I went to a retreat in January and she was honest with me. I needed to hear it 100 times like she did, but she's like, if it takes a year, that's probably what, like, be prepared. It will probably take a year for your body to get, like, your nervous system to get back out of the stress and all of that, and doing the physical therapy things the way you need to, putting in the right supplements. So I'm like, I have to slow down, and that is hard for me.
I know. Me too.
Furthermore, I'm gonna get my kids their assessment so that way they can get the help that they need in their schooling. That means everything to me right now. I actually had a company reach out to me again because of my authentic conversation online about ADHD, which, by the way, best thing in the world was going to Posh Fest, and the most common thing when people walked up to me to talk to me and even give me hugs or just hold my hand was someone looking at me in the eyes and going, thank you for helping me realize something I didn't see in myself. Thank you for me understanding my relationship with my son so much more. I have so much more grace with him now because of it. And so I'm going to keep talking about that online because it made me realize that most entrepreneurs are some sort of neurodivergent because we just do, like, we're wired that way. We're creatives. And so I love being able to find what's working for me and how to be successful with, like, planning or building out my plan, my business plan, and teaching other people how to work with their brain rather than against their brain.
I love that.
So personally,
can I take a second? That just makes me tear up. No, seriously. I think it's amazing when people have stories like that, being raw and real. I'm going to be working on, I actually have two YouTube channels. One is reselling and the other one is natural daily healthy living, where you get rid of chemicals and toxins and you eat healthy, maintain the body that God gave you inside and out. But it all starts inside. And I think it's amazing how the journey that you're going through is blessing other women who are struggling with their kids. We have a challenged son ourselves. He was born 3 months premature and has mental challenges. So hearing you say that blessed another person, I've had people come to me and say he's now 31 years old. He never even should have
Mm-hmm.
survived. He's a 31-year-old born 3 months premature, wasn't even supposed to survive birth. And he's an incredible testament to other people about how he is a human being born at 26 weeks gestation. And his story is just incredible. He is a literal walking miracle. Your story with your son
Mm-hmm.
is incredible, how you can share that with other people. And I think it's amazing as a mom to mom that you can do
Yeah.
that for other women.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that just touched me. I had to share
No.
that.
No. And see,
I think
honestly,
kind of where my
that's, I
business
think, kind of where my
is going
business
to
is
go. In the
going to go.
process
In the
of
process of
I kind of
me,
feel like
I
word
kind of feel
vomiting.
like
Like
word
I was
vomiting.
trying to
Like
find my
I was trying to
identity. I was
find my
trying to find
identity.
my
I was trying to
healing
find my
last year, and
healing
I was
last year, and I was
authentic
just
and willing to post
authentic
about
and
it
willing to
on
post
TikTok
about it
and
on
on
TikTok and
Instagram.
on
My
Instagram.
Instagram shot
My
up, I think,
Instagram shot up, I
15,000
think,
followers when I started
15,000
talking
followers
about
when I
that,
started talking about
and
that,
50 or
and
40,000
50
in
or
1 month on
40,000 in
TikTok.
1 month on
And
TikTok.
so I was like,
And
there's a
so I was
message
like, there's a
here.
message here.
My
Meanwhile,
kids being
my
home,
kids
and they
being
are
home,
creatives
and they are
too,
creatives
they
too,
really
they
want a
really,
YouTube
really, really
channel.
want a
And
YouTube
I've
channel.
been very
And I've
hesitant
been
with that
very
because I'm
hesitant
like,
with
I
that
want their
because I'm like, I want
privacy.
their
But they're at an
privacy.
age where
But
they're
they're at
like,
an
no, we
age where
want to
they're
have
like,
fun
no,
with
we
this.
want
They
to
see a
have
lot
fun
of
with this. They
families on
see a lot of
YouTube.
families on
And Jeff and
YouTube.
I finally
And
talked
Jeff and I
about it, and we
finally
were like,
talked about it,
no,
and we were like,
we
we
all
are we
have some
all
form of
have some form of
neurodivergency,
neurodivergency, and we're like, let's just call it the neurodivergent family, and let's just show what it is like understanding this about ourselves, and then how do we work in a
Wow.
world where we're totally neurotypicals. So honestly, I haven't publicly said that yet, so you're getting it fresh off the press. I've already got the channel established, but I
That's
haven't started posting it there yet.
amazing. And you are going to be such a
So
blessing to
we're
so
it's
many people through that.
Yeah, well, and I'm hoping so, because like I have companies now reaching out to me that they can do the assessment online. And so I'm like, I will do the assessment with my son, and I will share that journey with people, because I have so many people coming to me going, how are you getting them assessed? How are you getting them the help that they need? How are you getting them the tutoring that they need? So I love that I've been able to open up that door to help other people, because it's
Yeah.
one of my passions
So
too.
that's personally,
Reselling.
where do you want to go business-wise? Is that, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. I apologize.
you're
I'm
fine.
working on not
No, you're
doing that.
fine.
It's a bad habit.
So with reselling, we still want to keep listing. I'm still finding other products. I'm slowing down on thrifting so much, and I'm trying to do more online shopping, and just scheduling my listings out has really helped tremendously with the days that have been good and not so good. I want to have the same income that I had last year with my reselling business, which we've made over 6 figures. That's gross, obviously not net, but I do want to monetize more of my social media. So we're going back to my YouTube channel since I'm not doing so many live sales. I'll keep teaching about reselling, but I'm also going to start teaching more about these passive incomes that I've learned about that I'm using, and it's been successful. So that way, if anyone is listening and they're like, I can't do reselling, but I can be on my computer, or I have this skill set, that they can explore different ways to make money. And so I want my YouTube channel to be more of that. Like, how can we make money from home? Let me try different things and share how that's been. Just like my reselling business, like I tried reselling, here's my success. That's been my whole YouTube channel. So we'll continue to do that, and maybe one video a week we'll do on the neurodivergent family.
Nice. I'm excited for you. I have to admit, when you started doing the ADHD, I've been so focused on your reselling journey that when you switched gears on Instagram, I was like, where's the reselling content? But hearing you talk about how it's been such a blessing to people, I understand now why you were doing what you were doing, and that's just incredible. I'm excited for you.
Well, and I felt like they had to be two separate pillars. Like I couldn't keep talking about reselling because I started talking about ADHD. But when I started to have so many people go, oh no, that's me, I realized that I essentially, my reselling audience was my ADHD audience. Like they were already, or some sort of neurodivergent thing that like I can teach tips on like how to have good habits in your life, and how to, have success with listing consistent. We say consistency to ADHDers, that's really hard to do something consistent, because you'll do it consistent for like a month and then you'll forget about it. So I've been learning a lot of that. Now I'm just learning how to blend those two worlds together and be able to talk about them on a daily basis instead of it just being like one-sided. Like now I can only talk about this.
A lot has changed for you this last year.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my goodness. I am so glad we did this chat. I feel like there's still so much more we could talk about, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. It's already been an hour and a half. I hope that's okay.
Oh, no worries.
Oh, no worries.
I have so enjoyed talking to you. I'm loving doing these interviews with other resellers because it's not just reselling that I'm gleaning from you. I mean, it's making me, even my interview last week made me think about some things and really hone down on things that I need to pull back on or rethink. If something was working, why am I not doing that? So trying to find something else that's going to work on top of it, you know? Tech has been so instrumental for me and their community. Understanding just because everybody else is doing something and it's doing well for them doesn't mean it's going to be a niche for you. And my husband keeps telling me, you're trying to do too much. He hasn't said it that way. My husband is not like your husband. My husband is my grounder. We just celebrated 33 years last week, and he is my ground force. He is my better half. He is my strengths. He's my weakness. You know what I'm saying. And he's always coming to me. Let's rethink this. And it sounds like Jeff is that for you, and I think that is so amazing. It's so amazing. How long have you guys been married?
Oh yeah. Actually, we just what was it, 3 days ago? He asked me to marry him on February 12th, 12 years ago. So we celebrate that typically instead of Valentine's Day. But we've been together now for a little over 12 years.
I love it. I love it. Tell us again where we can find you, especially if you're okay with sharing your new channel. I'll leave that up to you. But where can people find you? Because there's going to be people on here watching this. I'm hoping a lot more people. Your channel's a lot bigger than mine. I'm still trying to grow mine, but I don't care what my numbers are. This is such a blessing. How can people find you again?
So
I've still maintained, even with my changes and my conversations online, my TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube is Ashley Wheeler of 8, so the number 8 at the end. The new channel, if I remember I did it right correctly, I will post it, link it for sure on my socials, but I think we called it the Neurodivergent Family. So we haven't posted anything over there yet. I think I'll repurpose all of my ADHD shorts over there, so that way that can start to foster that. But eventually we'll do vlogs as a family, so I can start teaching what are we doing to help our families have better success instead of just thinking why are they not, things working or not. So we're excited, and that's where you can find us on all the platforms.
Wow, so much going on. But you know what, you're juggling it, and may I say you're doing it beautifully, and may I say it's okay to make mistakes. We're flawed, and it's just I love how raw you've been. I'm hoping more people will be more like that this is just, guys, it's not all peaches and cream. It really isn't. No matter if you're just a stay-at-home mom, if your dad working, a single dad, a single mom, a reseller, working a job, life is raw and crazy, and it's okay to express that and show that. And I think you're doing it beautifully. And I'm excited about what you guys are doing. And I'm just so thrilled that I got to do an interview with you. I've learned so much from you today.
I know. I'm so thankful for that. Thank you for asking me.
And I'm excited. Once I edit everything, I will post a link so that you can share it to whoever you want to share it to as well. Again, it'll be a couple weeks out from now, but oh my goodness, thank you so much for taking so much time with us. And I'm excited for you, and I'm excited about posting this video and being a blessing to so many other people.
Absolutely.
So,
thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Take care, girl. You guys, God bless you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. This was so enjoyable. I felt bad it was an hour and a half long, but I felt it was just so worth it. And there was no aspect of this video that I wanted to cut out. So thank you so much for enjoying the entire interview of this, you guys. Thank you so much for you guys for being here with me and enjoying these interviews. And guys, we'll see you next time. Take care. And as always, be productive.